Good morning, lovelies. Today we're going to be talking about Mary Sues, what they are, whether or not they're sexist, and why most writers honestly shouldn't care if their character gets labeled one. Before we get started, remember to click that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss another episode. I post new videos every Sunday. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. All those links are in the description. I also now have a merch store, so if you're looking for sarcastic and nerdy t-shirt, mugs, pillows, stickers, phone cases, whatever, go check it out. That's also linked in the description. Okay, first things first. What is a Mary Sue? Guys, I tried so hard. I scoured the internet trying to find one universal definition that all can agree to. And I couldn't find it because it doesn't exist. So let's backtrack. Let's start from the beginning. What was the first character called that was a Mary Sue? The first Mary Sue was a character named Mary Sue in a Star Trek fanfiction that was actually a satire of how Star Trek fanfic was written back in the day in the 70s or 80s, I believe. And it was basically an idealized author self-insert character. So this was what a Mary Sue meant, an author self-insert in fan fiction, and the male counterpart to it was usually Gary Stu, but it has since evolved. A more universal definition is a character that everyone in the story loves, unless they're the villain, and who is unnaturally skilled and powerful and competent and can do anything and everything. Except for the anti-Sue, who is genuinely useless and yet everyone likes them anyway. Or the villain Sue, where the villain is the author's favorite character and also probably a self-insert. Or the black hole Sue, where everything in the story revolves around them. Relationships, prophecies, villainous obsessions, various plots, whatever. Or the God mode Sue, which has all the power. Or the purity Sue, who is too good for this sinful world and probably also dies at some point. And just so many Mary Sue, so many definitions for it. I mean, this is the first problem. When you're using the term Mary Sue to describe a character, the definition that you're using is probably very different from the definition that somebody else is using. The most common, not universal, but the most common, the most familiar definition today of a Mary Sue is a character who lacks character flaws, like John Wick. Or perhaps they're just overpowered and able to solve every one of their problems with ease, and or they keep pulling new powers and abilities out of their ass. See again, John Wick, also Goku, Batman, James Bond, etc. Or maybe you're a traditionalist and you just think that a Mary Sue is an idealized version of the writer, like Luke Skywalker. If you disagree with any of the names that I just listed, you've stumbled upon the main problem. Even if we all agreed on a singular definition of a Mary Sue, and we won't, it's still purely subjective. I will argue to my dying day, I will have it on my tombstone if I have to, that John Wick is one of the biggest Sues to grace modern cinema, despite many people disagreeing with me. And that's fine. This is literally what the internet was made for. Stories aren't like math, and whether or not people like them isn't always logical. Stories, like all art forms, are emotional. People have very strong opinions and emotions about them. And it doesn't help that even though Mary Sues themselves aren't always inherently bad, so the term itself has become an insult, both to the character and the writer, and that's why this is such a highly charged term and such a controversial issue. People hear Mary Sue and immediately translate it to lazy, overindulgent writing and a poorly written character. If you call someone's favorite character a Mary Sue, you might as well have insulted their firstborn child. But chances are, one of your favorite heroes is another person's Mary Sue, and vice versa. And that's okay. And this is the problem with subjectivity. A character is only ever labeled a Mary Sue when a significant chunk of the audience thinks they're a Sue, regardless of whether or not they actually are. And the only time the question even comes up is with a female character. This is how you get internet wars about Rey and Luke being a Sue. The fact that they both appear in the same saga in movies meant to mimic each other begs for examination, but Rey is judged far more harshly than Luke, despite the fact that he is a glorified self-insert for George Lucas, and therefore, by traditional definition, a Mary Sue. Women are always judged more harshly than men. That's how patriarchies work. Even without the self-insert thing, I personally think that if Rey is a Mary Sue, and there's reason to believe she is, thanks in large part to the total trash fire that was Rise of Skywalker, then so is Luke. But I'm not here to argue that. I'm here to talk about Mary Sues in general. You guys, you fight it out in the comments. Whatever. People act like Mary Sues are a new thing, but they're not. They've always existed in media. Overly sarcastic productions pointed out Beowulf as a classic example when they covered this topic. I personally have not read it, but I would like to put forward several Greek heroes who fit various Sue definitions. Definitely Perseus. Most Greek heroes have at least one flaw, usually hubris, sometimes wrath, but Perseus literally has none, so by one of the most common definitions, he is a Sue. Doctor Who is very Sue-ish, although, you guessed it, he only got the label when he transformed into the female Doctor, which is telling. Batman, James Bond, and John Wick are all hyper-competent, capable of beating even the most powerful and feared villains. Superman and Goku are God mode Sues. They're everywhere. The biggest risk of a Mary Sue is to authors. They're so afraid of their female character getting labeled a Mary Sue that they censor themselves. We wring our hands over whether or not audiences will like the first live-action Wonder Woman or Captain Marvel movie, but nobody thinks twice about the 20th Superman or Spider-Man reboot. Seriously, Superman is one of the biggest Sues to ever sue, but no one ever calls him out on it. His movies don't get nearly as much critical analysis as Wonder Woman, but you can bet your ass that if he'd been Superwoman, audiences wouldn't have let her become nearly as iconic, because the idea of a woman being so powerful is considered unrealistic even by the standards of fiction. And this is the core of the issue. If a male character is a hypercompetent author insert, the worst it'll be called is silly, brain-melting fun, a decent way to burn a few bucks and spend a few hours. And they're right. If you get Keanu Reeves to play the character, then you'll end up with a whole franchise. Do the same with a female character and she's slapped with the Mary Sue label and killed at the box office. Worse, anyone who likes her or her movie is shamed for it in a way that admirers of Gary Stu's aren't. We're used to seeing male Sues. They star in every testosterone-charged action film. But female characters don't get the freedom to be Mary Sues. They're not celebrated, encouraged, or normalized the way their male counterparts are. They're condemned, and that's the problem. I'm not saying that we should encourage or even celebrate female Mary Sues. They're boring, and yes, usually a sign of bad writing. Bella from Twilight is the prime example for this one. What I am saying is that if we're going to keep using the Mary Sue label as an insult, we need to use it on male characters as often as the female ones. We have strong emotions about stories and characters, and it can hurt to have one of your favorites called a Mary Sue. Trust me, I know, but we have to be honest with ourselves. If your favorite character turns out to be a Sue, you can still enjoy them. Don't let anyone else shame you for your tastes, and don't shame other people for enjoying a Sue. All I'm asking is that you be honest about it, especially if that character is a guy. Finally, if you're an author and your character gets labeled a Mary Sue, keep two things in mind. One, it could be a valid accusation, especially if they're able to bring up clear, concise examples and comparisons with other characters in similar media. And if that's the case, who cares? Some people are still going to enjoy your work. You can take it as a learning experience for your next story. It's whatever. Or, number two, it could just be instinctive fanboy hatred at the idea of a woman able to hold her own in a fight. In which case, fuck them. Don't censor your character out of fear. Write the character you want to write. Just prepare yourself for the fact that if that character is a hyper-competent or even moderately capable woman, then no matter what you do, she's probably gonna get the Sue label at some point. Assholes exist, just brace yourself. We need more awesome women characters. Women who are powerful and confident, so please, please, write them. And don't be afraid of a little pushback from whiny little sexists. That is it for today. Thank you for watching. If you know of any Mary Sues or Gary Stews that I missed, point them out in the comments, please. And if you liked this video, hit subscribe so that you get notified for next week's video, where I'll talk about the basics of world building for sci-fi and fantasy writers. If you want early access to these videos and more content, check me out on Patreon. That link is in the description. And of course, check out the merch store if you're looking for some sarcastic bookworm goodies, also linked in the description. Bye, lovelies!